You're listening to the UnSafe Bible with Pastor Ken Brown.
He made everything out of nothing. And that's what the Bible teaches. And here we are in the 21st century, and we think the same like the nation of Israel did back in the 6th century BC. We think that somebody else was responsible for it. Well, the problem that you have in Israel is ingratitude. The problem you have with Gomer is ingratitude. She does not understand that Hosea loves her and he's taking care of her. And that's the same problem we have today, is ingratitude.
Today, Pastor Ken will remind you that God is the designer and craftsman of everything in the universe, and He created human beings a step above all the rest. By breathing His own life into that man, He created the man and woman in His own image. That means that human beings are more like God than any other created thing. We have an eternal spirit just as God has. The wise person bows before the Creator and willingly submits himself or herself to the only one who truly knows how we are made. Well, let's join Pastor Ken in the book of Hosea, chapter 2, as he begins his message, Big Plans, Big Grace.
What we're talking about is the fact that even though Hosea is trying to convince his wife to be faithful, and she is blowing it left and right, he has big plans for her. Just as the Lord has big plans for Israel, even though Israel has turned and walked away. So when you see the plans that God has, it means that there's going to have to be big grace to be able to forgive what they're doing. So the big plans that God has for Israel, and we'll get a hint of that before we finish this evening, equals the fact that we're going to be talking next week about the gigantic big grace of God, what His grace is all about. But bottom line, even though Israel's been caught cheating, even though Gomer has been caught cheating, Hosea still loves her. And the love and grace of God is still going to achieve wonders, which is what it does. Now, Hosea, as we've been reading, has been explaining the lengths that he's willing to go to in order to see his wife restored to him and remain faithful. That's the second part. Being restored is one thing, but remaining faithful is the second. He knows that he has a dysfunctional home life. And he also knows that was because the Lord wanted him to show how dysfunctional Israel is in their relationship with Yahweh. There are some things, though, that Hosea has been doing that his wife is not aware of. Just as Israel is not aware of everything that Yahweh has been doing for them. Israel has a blindness problem, just like Gomer does. Everything that Israel had, and remember, at the beginning of the book of Hosea, they're a prosperous nation, okay? They won't be by the time we get to the end of Hosea. They're protected, they're prosperous, they've got a good military, yeah, that's all from the Lord, and the Lord's going to remove all of that. But they're going to attribute it to their false gods, and that's the problem. They're going to attribute it to their false gods. And here's a little dirty secret that Hosea has for us. The conditions that we see with Israel and their relationship with the Lord exist today with the nations of the world. The same conditions. We have an entire generation right now that believes everything in the world came to existence by random chance. I mean, they at least attributed it to Baal or some other false god. We don't even do that. We attribute it to chance, random stuff happening, or worse, you have a whole group now that say aliens did it. Okay. It's so bad that even in the scriptures, in the book of Revelation, the church has to be reminded in Revelation 3 that God made it all. Have you noticed that? I've been reading several different commentaries on the book of Genesis, and used to be they all said, in the beginning God created, and now they're talking about different things. They're saying, well, it's a polemic for... No, wait a minute. It's telling you how God made the world. The church is beginning to stray away. The reality, though, is simple, okay? If anybody thinks that an alien intelligence did this, I'm going to agree with them. An extraterrestrial was deeply involved in the creation. His name is God. Okay? He made everything out of nothing. And that's what the Bible teaches. And here we are in the 21st century, and we think the same like the nation of Israel did back in the 6th century BC. We think that somebody else was responsible for it. Well, the problem that you have in Israel is ingratitude. The problem you have with Gomer is ingratitude. She does not understand that Hosea loves her and he's taking care of her. And that's the same problem we have today, is ingratitude. We don't really want to understand that God made everything and he's the one who's responsible for it. How many in our culture today think they're the ones who are responsible for what God has provided them? I mean, just, tons. We have been too busy, like Israel and like Gomer, worshiping at the altar of self-sufficiency and I can do it myself. By the way, that's considered a virtue in the United States. I can do it on my own. Or as Benjamin Franklin 1:1 says, God helps those who help themselves. No, he doesn't. We need to be falling in front of the throne and worshiping him. That's the bottom line. So we come to verse 8 of chapter 2. Yet she does not know that it was I myself, this is Hosea talking, who gave her the grain, the new wine, and the oil, and lavished on her silver and gold. And then all of a sudden we're flipping and talking about Israel, which they used for Baal. Therefore I'll take back my grain at harvest time, and my new wine in its season. I'll also take away my wool and my flax that I gave to cover her nakedness. Verse 8, according to a lot of commentators, is a giant pivot point. And all of a sudden Hosea is not talking about his relationship with his wife anymore. He's now talking about Israel and the Lord. But there are elements of his personal home life that are still showing up in this. It's still being reflected. I mean, it sounds like an old country western song, actually. Hosea loves his wife, but she's busy looking for love everywhere else, right? Other than the person who really, truly loves her and what he'll provide for her. So, you could tune it up and say, yes, she's looking for love in all the wrong places. And she's looking for love in too many faces, and I'm not going to go any beyond that. But it is a country western song, by the way. And it sounds like, and you start reading this and you're going like, okay, I've heard this on the radio more than once. In this we see the love of God for his people, and we see the love of God for us too. So because before we came to Jesus, we are all totally blind to everything that God has done to woo us to himself. Am I the only one? Did we know what the Holy Spirit was doing in our life before we came to Jesus? All we know is why do people keep talking to me about the Lord? I don't want to hear this anymore. Over and over. I was happy being a pagan. Don't bother me. And I kept hearing people talk about the Lord, even at school. And I'm going like, what's up with this? The Holy Spirit does whatever he has to woo us to the Lord. He's going to get our attention. And for some of us, that is a very serious thing to get our attention. But it helps us realize that we have a need for salvation, that the Lord's the only one that can provide it, and he's the source of what we think, up to that point, we had done on our own. And for a lot of us, he showed us that, no, you can't do it on your own. How's it going so far? Well, it's not doing real good. Why don't you try giving your life to the Lord? So consider this. Homer's wife, Gomer, has moved in with her latest lover. And he says, I'm going to take care of you. I'm going to provide all that you need. Yet he can't do that. He doesn't have enough money. He's spending it someplace else. He's got a hot chariot outside that he's got to take care of, okay? Needs a paint job. So Hosea has continued to provide the basic foodstuffs for his wife, and he's not stopped doing it. He hasn't canceled her credit card. She's still, she thinks her lover's providing this, and it's Hosea who is. Her lover says, look what I gave you. And actually, Hosea left a sack of groceries at the front door. He never canceled her credit cards. At least at this point, he hadn't. That's a common occurrence today. When you have one spouse involved in adultery and it's hidden and there hasn't been a discovery moment yet, the other spouse is unaware, and that unaware spouse continues to be the dutiful spouse. You continue to take care of the laundry, you continue to do the cooking, or take care of the yard or whatever it is, pay the bills, prepare the meals, wonder why that credit card has that charge on it. What's that for? Until a discovery takes place. And when the discovery takes place, everything changes. I remember listening to a judge in Beaumont, Texas. This was a guy who worked in family court. And he talked about the adultery discovery moment in Beaumont, how it seemed to play out, because he heard it in his court more than once. And he saw a trend. He said if the husband was the one who was cheating and the wife was from Texas, the husband would arrive home and find all of his earthly belongings in the front yard. However, if the wife was of Cajun extract, meaning she was from 30 miles away in Louisiana, all his earthly belongings would still be in the front yard, but on fire. It must be a Cajun thing. I don't know. And he said it was common. That's what he saw. And we think some of what Hosea is talking about is harsh. Really. For God, there is no such thing as a discovery moment. He sees and knows everything. He knows what Israel's doing. He knows why they've failed, why they've moved away. He's omniscient. They can't hide anything from him. They think they can, but they can't. It's like Jonah, which we'll find out, thinks he can run away from God. That doesn't work either. God knows about Israel's predilection towards apostasy and a deep defection that exists in them. It doesn't take him by surprise. He knows. He's been warning them with prophets. He's been telling them, stop doing this. And that's what Hosea is doing. He's part of that. The amazing thing, though, is the claim that Israel makes at the very top of verse 8. They claim they did not know that Yahweh was the one who made all the provisions for his people. They attributed it all to Baal. But they alleged they didn't know God did this. What we're seeing is what we call today agnosticism being exhibited in the 6th century BC. Our culture has a lot of folks, about 25% actually, who make that assertion today, that they can't know whether or not God created the universe. They're active in attributing everything to randomness and chance. Hosea 2:8, again, and she did not know, that's what it says in the Septuagint, that I gave her the grain and the wine and the olive oil, and I multiplied money for her, but she made silver and gold for Baal. They claim not to know. Am I the only one that has trouble believing that? We have to go to Mount Sinai, book of Exodus, chapter 20, verses 18 to 21. This is the same Israel. All the people were seeing the thundering. How do you see thundering? They saw it. I don't know what it was, but they saw thundering and the lightning and heard the sound of the horn and saw the mountain smoking. And when the people saw it, they trembled with fear and kept their distance. Well, we didn't know God made all this. Really? They said to Moses, you speak to us and we'll listen, but don't let God speak with us lest we die. Moses said to the people, do not fear, for God has come to test you, that the fear of him may be before you, so that you do not sin. And the people kept their distance, but Moses drew near the thick darkness where God was. Solomon, by the way, identified this disease 200 years earlier than Hosea's writing. In Ecclesiastes chapter 1, verse 9 to 11. Solomon says this, history merely repeats itself. It's all been done before. Nothing under the sun is truly new. Sometimes people say, oh, here's something that's new. But actually it's old. Nothing is ever truly new. We don't remember what happened in the past, and in future generations, no one will remember what we're doing now. The problem is we got people around today who don't remember what was going on in the 50s, in the 60s. And you're going like, I can understand why some wouldn't remember the 60s, but that's a different issue. But you look at this, and having studied history, being a historian, one of the things I've learned is that this statement is incredibly true. 2,900 years after it was written, it's still true. We have people who think that an alternative lifestyle is a new thing, yet as I study history, I find out that was going on way before 700 BC. In fact, they had transsexual gods, and they had all of this was going on then. It's not new. It's old. What was new was living for the Lord and being righteous and not doing those things. No one remembers the past. No one wants to remember it. They don't. And we see that in the culture. We see that all around us. Using this argument that they did not know, though, is attractive. Have we noticed that a lot of people like to be agnostics today? This is a term that didn't show up until the 1860s. A scientist by the name of T.X. Huxley is the one who coined the term in 1869. Agnosticism comes from the Greek word gnosis, and you put an alpha in front of it, which means it's the opposite. So gnosis means knowing. The alpha means it's not knowing. And it was coined as a technical term to recognize knowledge that's not logical or empirical. In particular, agnosticism denies the claim that God is knowable. In other words, and I love the way the author puts this, he says it might be called metaphysical abstention. But I struggle with the choice of the term. Why agnosticism? There's other great words you could have used. That one sounds intellectual, doesn't it? You know, I've got the Greek, and I'm just going all here. And I appreciate the high-sounding term, using the Greek gnosis and then adding the alpha in front of it. But why not use the Latin term ignorus, which means ignorant of a thing, not knowing, unacquainted with, inexperienced, or unaware. We have an English word that dates from 1616. Ignoramus. It means the same thing, right? But agnosticism is more intellectual sounding, even than using the word, the phrase ignoratio elenche, which literally means ignorance of proof. That dates to 1588. It's a fallacy in logic of supposing a point is proved or disproved by an argument proving or disproving something's not an issue. Have you ever noticed that Satan likes to make his lies sound intellectual and appealing? That's why we have this term. He actually appealed to Adam and Eve the same way in Genesis 3, 4, and 5. Made the sin sound like, it made it sound like it's attractive to do this. It's intellectual. You'll understand. So let's talk a little bit about agnosticism, since that's a problem for Israel here. We have family members who have moved to this square. I'm sure all of us have talked with someone at one time or another who says, I really don't know. I can't know. It's more popular than atheism because atheism assumes that you've studied all the things that you can possibly study about all the gods and you've come to the conclusion that one doesn't exist. Agnosticism is a little more intellectually honest than atheism is. Atheists can't be certain that there is no God because they can't be certain of that, so many of them are really agnostics rather than atheists. But what it says in the Bible in Romans chapter 1, verse 20, for ever since the world was created, people have seen the earth, the sky, everything that God's made, and they can clearly see his invisible qualities, eternal power, and divine nature. They got no excuse for not knowing God. That's why so many astronomers start off not being believers and finish off being believers, because they start looking at what, and they go, wow, yeah, and they come to know the Lord. But most people like to use no, there's nothing to see here. I'm not going to look at it. No, I'm not going to see. No hear, no see, no speak. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to stick my head in the sand. But there are those who were atheists who actually intellectually start looking at the evidence. You can't deny the evidence. You have to look at it. Antony Flew was an atheist. And he said, because he wound up becoming one who believed in God, he said, I must say that the journey to my discovery of the divine has been a pilgrimage of reason. He starts looking at the evidence. I followed the argument to where it led me, and it has led me to accept the existence of a self-existent, immutable, immaterial, omnipotent, omniscient being. He went from atheist to believing in God. Time prevents us from going really deep into this because this is a rabbit hole you can spend a lot of time in. But this is where Israel is. They've reached the point now where they don't know that God could have done this. And this is still a popular destination today. People don't know that God can do this. They don't know that God exists. They don't know that Jesus exists. Blaise Pascal, who was a mathematician, came up with an argument that's hard to say no to when you look at it. It's called Pascal's wager. He was a French philosopher, a scientist, mathematician. He actually invented the first working computer, the vacuum cleaner. He invented that too. So blame him. And public transportation. He did that too. But what he said was this, and it's really interesting. Yes, you must wager. It's not optional. You are embarked. Which will you choose then? Let us see. You must choose. Let us see what interests you the least. You have two things to lose, the true and the good, and two things to stake, your reason and your will, your knowledge and your happiness. And your nature has two things to shun, error and misery. Your reason is no more shocked in choosing one rather than the other, since you must of necessity choose. This is the 1 point settled. So we have to choose. We have to say, yes, there is a God, or there is no God. But your happiness, that's what's at stake. So let us weigh the gain and the loss in wagering that God is. Let us estimate these two chances. If you gain all. If you lose nothing. Wager then without hesitation that he is. I mean, that's a pretty strong argument. That, if you don't believe in God, why are you going to take an eternal chance on that? What if he's true? What if it's real? Agnosticism cannot begin and end where it likes. God cannot be expelled from the intellect without the moral quality, too. What I've found with most people who say they don't know is that they have a moral problem. It's not that they don't know it. They don't want to know, because if God is who he is, then they have to change their lifestyle. And they don't want to change their lifestyle. Agnosticism is a larger question than that can be limited to mere dry intellect, and it means a deprivation of moral sensibility as expressed in the action of gratitude. People don't have gratitude for God if they don't believe he exists. They don't want to be responsible. They don't want to be responsible to God. And that's what, once you understand that God made it all, now all of a sudden you have the realization that I've got to be responsible to him. He's the one that did it. If I'm responsible to him, then I got to live for him. I got to understand how I can please him, which means I've got to change my life, and I don't want to change my life. In reality, what Israel had was self-centered ingratitude, disguised as Baal worship. Okay, they're attributing all God did to Baal and deprive God of all of his honor. Those who reject Jesus today in favor of not knowing are doing the same thing. Have you noticed that? They don't know, they reject God, they reject Jesus. The problem, though, with Jesus is he set it up so that you just don't have that choice. Just as God did with Israel, you just don't have that choice. Why don't you act on it? Here's the deal about Jesus, okay? You got to decide about him. You cannot not decide about him. We've been forced into a corner, and the corner is because he is a well-attested to historical figure here on the earth. So who is he? And C.S. Lewis actually asked that question. Well, and you remember, Jesus said, I'm God. But people will say, oh, he's a good teacher. Well, would a good teacher say he's God? He would either, C.S. Lewis speaking, he would either be a lunatic on the level with the man who says he's a poached egg, or else he'd be the devil of hell. You've got to make a choice. Either this man was and is the Son of God, or he's a madman. You can shut him up for being a fool, you can spit at him, and you can kill him as a demon, or you can fall at his feet and call him Lord and God. But don't call him a great human teacher.
The voice you just heard is that of Pastor Ken, here on the UnSafe Bible, as he's making his way through the Old Testament book of Hosea. This is one of many teachings in this book, and we trust that the words of Hosea will encourage you in your own walk of faith. Are you new to hearing the Word of God? Are you still trying to figure out this whole Jesus thing? You know what? That's okay. We all begin somewhere. Are you listening closely? Begin now. We are here for you and would like nothing better than to connect with you. All you have to do is go to our website, theunsafebible.com, and click on the Connect tab. Then click on the Connect card. There you'll find a form to fill out. This allows us to get in touch with you. We honestly look forward to speaking with you. If this feels a little overwhelming, we understand. Why not come see firsthand what we're all about? We'd love to have you at one of our services. All information can be found at theunsafebible.com. While you're there, be sure to look around. You can learn more about us and what we believe or follow us on Facebook, X, and YouTube. There's also an archive of messages easily organized so that you can find whatever interests you rather quickly. Don't be shy. Stay a while and soak in God's Word. When you're done listening, would you prayerfully consider donating to this ministry? If so, just locate the Give tab to get started. Thank you so much for your support. Our time is up for today, but we hope you make plans to join us again here on the UnSafe Bible.